Thanks to the very generous patrons over on my Patreon, I am now earning over $100 a month on this channel, so that means they've unlocked an old video I made 2 years ago responding to a Sargon of Akkad video called Social Justice Isn't Cool. Fair warning, the audio here is pretty rough, the mic I used was pretty terrible, and originally I was just going to release the audio, but I realized huge chunks of it don't make any sense without certain visuals, so I've kind of patched that in. But this is very much a quick video that I hope people will enjoy while I've got something bigger in the works. It's honestly not my best work. There's a reason I didn't put it online. I didn't think it was especially great, but I thought it would be a fun extra and maybe people can get something out of it. Now that Carl Benjamin is currently running for office, this video seems like an artifact from before he was making a fool of himself on an international stage. I think this video is a nice reminder that he was never that bright, he was never that thoughtful, and the main reason I never uploaded it was because I realized I was essentially responding to a completely vacuous statement about what is and is not cool. As one of his commenters put it, he was basically operating at the level of an obnoxious high school kid. Which seems about right for his entire career, to be honest. Enough of my rambling, here's the actual video. I hope you all like it, and once again, apologies for the audio.
I've noticed that over the last 10 years, people have been posting nonsense on YouTube. As a rational person, I've decided it's fallen upon me to point out how wrong they are. So, here I go. First guy I want to talk about is Sargon of Akkad and his video, Social Justice is Uncool. One of the first examples he uses is Sarah's Scribbles, a webcomic by Sarah Anderson, which he classifies as
self-indulgent nonsense.
He mentioned something about the comics having the
preachy, quasi-religious rhetoric of social justice.
The problem is, the webcomic he points out has nothing to do with social justice. Unless time management is a social justice issue now. Next, he points out how white nationalists are parroting this particular webcomic. I guess white nationalists parroting something means it must have a social justice agenda, but I don't really follow the train of thought here since I generally don't let white nationalists frame my criticisms, and it sounds like Sargon is alluding to that Anderson is asking for it with her content. That's pretty classy. Anyway, we're just warming up here. A bigger example Sargon wants to talk about is the comic book industry and its stark decline. Social justice apparently means including Hillary Clinton and Justin Trudeau in a comic book. I'm not really sure why this is the case, but he'd be horrified to know that politicians have been in comics for many years, from recent appearances like Obama in Spider-Man to older ones like JFK and Superman. It's something that's been going on for decades. As for that Hillary story, it turns out it wasn't published in any sort of Watchmen title by DC Comics. It was actually created by two independent artists, Aaron Edwards and Arlen Schumer, for their website, The Outline. They're reimagining the original Watchmen series as if it were taking place following Trump's election. Kind of an interesting idea, although the reverence for Hillary is kind of odd, I guess. But the important thing is that this is not a comic being published by DC Comics. It's just taken from some random website.
And God knows why DC is jumping on this bandwagon.
Well, they aren't. Now Thor. Holy shit. Apparently this new Thor comic is...
that this comic is an act of cultural conquest.
Who knew? He takes issue with Absorbing Man's dialogue. Apparently it's standing in for old Thor readers, or at least those who have issues with an female Thor. This is a really cynical reading. Basically assumes that all the old Thor readers are reactionary man-children who are upset that their favorite character lost his name. The point here is that Absorbing Man is supposed to sound small and petty, representing a fraction of the readership. A fact backed up by the sales numbers, but we'll get to that shortly. If someone really misses Guy Thor, you can actually still read about him in the other Thor comic. Some conquest. Captain America is a Nazi. Actually, he's in Hydra, whose history is a bit more complicated than that. Maybe instead of looking at an article about the story, we can actually look at its contents. In this particular narrative, the Red Skull, Captain America's archenemy and an actual Nazi, rewrote history using the Cosmic Cube to change Captain America's past so that he's a member of Hydra. Call me a cynical comic reader if you must, but I suspect this change may not be permanent. That perhaps the villain might actually lose in the end, sort of like how Spider-Man did that a few years ago when Dr. Octopus took over his mind for a year, or when Iron Man was made evil by a magic spell gone awry. In other words, it's an unfinished comic book story that will end with Captain America going back to his old patriotic self. That's right, it's not even finished yet, but hey, let's accuse it of all sorts of shit. But as for that particular story's commentary on America, it's actually not about Captain America fans being Nazis, believe it or not. I mean, who would call their readership Nazis? And it's pretty good from what I've read so far anyway, and I'm hoping to read the rest of it when it's finally finished. Sargon hones in on comments from Marvel's VP of Sales, David Gabriel, who in a recent comment mentioned how sales have been dropping due to the influx of new characters, including visible minorities and women in Marvel's recent titles. Neither Gabriel nor Sargon seem to think this is quite the case, but on Sargon's side, he's jumped to it being because these characters are about social justice and are being rewarded with terrible sales. I have to assume the characters he mentioned so far are his examples, so if we take the examples of the new Thor, Hydra Cap, and Mockingbird, only that last one was cancelled. And for what it may be worth, I think Mockingbird is all like Solo, Prowler, Hellcat, Scarlet Witch, and the rest, who are Marvel characters who just can't seem to hold an ongoing title. Dozens of new titles are launched every year. In fact, most of the time they get cancelled because they just don't sell that well.
This is actually the cover of a Marvel magazine. Civil War II.
Civil War II. Civil War II.
Feminism is the hegemonic ideology that they kowtow to, and if you want to enjoy Marvel Comics, you'd better enjoy feminism as well, because you're going to get a lot of it.
The fact that we're talking about Mockingbird exclusively is a strange exception, unless you're going to tell me how a crappy Punisher knockoff like Solo is pushing a social justice agenda and had shitty sales for the same reason. When it comes to female Thor, it turns out she sells pretty well, and she's actually been an overall success for the comic. Although Marvel has seen an overall decline, Thor has been one of the more reliable performers, consistently in the top third of sales for Marvel. As for Hydra Cap, it's a bit early to tell how well that's selling. For what it's worth, the big, first issue of the event centered around him, for some reason, number 0, that was the top selling comic in April. Yeah, I don't really see Marvel being hurt by that particular social justice agenda comic. Next, in the video, Sargon takes on some articles that have criticized Gabriel's statement by reading their headlines in a mocking tone. He doesn't really engage with any arguments here, so it's hard to know what to address. He didn't really acknowledge stuff like an endless series of event comics, an oversaturation in the number of titles, the industry overall being in a downturn, or even stiff competition from DC Comics, but I guess none of those are really arguments that resonate as strongly with him as blaming it all on social justice warriors. Yeah, it's a lot easier to do that than to actually try and look at the real and many various reasons why Marvel Comics is not doing so well right now. Okay, the next thing we're talking about is how cringy David K. Harbour's speech was at the SAG Awards. I don't know, I guess it was a little overwrought, but maybe I'm a little less sensitive to an artist feeling as though their work has some power to affect the world positively. But yeah, what an asshole wanting to do something positive through entertainment. Regardless of what anyone thinks of that speech, I think it'll probably end up with a lot of people tuning into the second season of Stranger Things. That's just a hunch, though. Next up is Samantha Bee. Apparently it's impossible to sit through one of her clips, so impossible that her ratings have been going up by a lot. Her ratings started off humbly enough with about 900,000 viewers since Trump's election, though. Since then, her ratings have reached an average of 2.1 million. In fact, she's doing so well that TBS just picked her up for another 26 episodes, so I guess there's some people out there who like her. The rest of the video is just talking shit about the new Bill Nye show, and since that show's ratings are unknowable, since Netflix hasn't really released them, we can't really know how popular it is. And, personally, I haven't actually watched the show, and I'm not really comfortable talking about it without having hard facts to back up my claims about its popularity. There's a lesson in there somewhere for someone who isn't me. The video ends with some girl in a black mask bemoaning the level of wit displayed at a protest. He doesn't really have any facts or evidence to back up his claims. He's picking and choosing what he likes to fit a particular narrative. Something, anything to advance the notion that social justice is some kind of virus infecting the media that will soon destroy it. I guess he sees himself as something of a heroic figure, standing tall against the tide of social justice as it destroys all the things he doesn't care about. But sales and ratings of this stuff doesn't seem to back it up. People actually enjoy watching and reading all this stuff, and they seem to be able to do it without it getting the Sargon stamp of cool. And ultimately, does that really matter? Sargon's voice is howling in the wilderness for a time that's slipping away, when superheroes were all white guys, or when comedy didn't have a political conscience, or when we all heeded the sage wisdom of a woman in a balaclava. Personally, when I see media I don't like, I generally stop watching it and move on with my life. Or sometimes write and produce an entire YouTube video.
Thanks for watching that video. If you want to see more of these old videos get unlocked, I've got at least one more. It's very short and has me singing and maybe some other stuff I will reveal. Become one of my patrons and bring the world more videos like this, I guess. Or actually good ones I produce more regularly. Also, you can subscribe to this channel, like, comment, etc. Follow me on Twitter, Curious Cat Questions. I think that's about everything. Except for, thanks for watching.